servers which are being built today, keeping in mind the quick transition which will happen from the 10% share to a 30 plus share, I think is going to enable the, the, the experiences we derive out of capturing point of sale information and translating that into meaningful supply chain execution processes. We feel that, I think first change that's already happening and that will continue to happen at a faster pace will be on the last mile aspects of any supply chain, irrespective of which industry you are in. Now let's assume that there is higher point of sale penetration enabled by cloud computing, throw some analytics capabilities on it, and use control tower to watch, monitor, and react to the data which is coming in from the organized segment. The sections of supply chain which are going to be using this and reacting to that are going to be what we call as the medium mile or the next mile in the supply chain, which is most often the warehouses or the distribution centers which collect this demand data and respond to the real demand data by moving material from the distribution centers to real consumption points. I think the next big change, which is probably waiting to happen, a bit enabled by what's happening on the GST legislation piece, is a bit more mechanized warehousing than it is today. I use that very cautiously because automation as it is touted to be in, let's say, the media is not going to be a reality in an Indian warehousing space anytime soon, given the labor cost arbitrage we have in India vis-a-vis the automation cost which currently are present in the country. So in the mid-mile, I think warehouses are going to be more mechanized than they are today. There are probably going to be volume utilization, maximization related mechanization than probably unit handling, pallet handling related mechanization. Once the warehouses get mechanized, what it does to the ecosystem of entire warehousing traceability and track and trace is it mandates the need for a warehouse management system. I think we are going to see a big surge in warehouse management system. Any search we see on the micro, small, medium enterprises is going to be on mostly SaaS-based WMS adoption. Large corporates, until the SaaS WMS ecosystem matches the size and complexity requirements of large enterprises, it's largely going to be on the enterprise version in the small to medium kind of a time frame. Now, with all the data which is coming from point of sale systems, what are we going to do about that as a supply chain? I think the significant share of, a skewed share of a push and pull is going to be more moderated, and it is going to be more pull basis the real-time demand data which comes from consumption points, which is not accessible to an Indian business house today. That itself is going to level lots of challenges on the mid-mile warehousing operations, which are normally skewed towards last week. 30-40% of the your shipments happen in the last week. Close to 50% of that happens in the last day. There is a big labor availability issues, overtime issues, and 100 other compliance issues which are happening on the mid-mile. If you are probably a 85-15 push-pull company, there is a high chance that in a year and a half from now, you'll go towards high 60s, low 70s. That's going to be a big change and a big relief to, I think, supply chain planners upstream who are trying to procure, inventorize, and move material from manufacturing plants till end customer points. So now that the warehousing ecosystem is going to see a bit of a shake-up, I think the connection between a warehousing ecosystem as well as, let's say, an end consumer, which is the last mile intra-city trucking space, which was normally on a dedicated truck doing one trip a day, possibly doing single shipments, not multiple shipments in a truck, is going to change drastically. I think we see a big surge in the use of data analytics, very intelligent algorithms to optimize routes, traffics, truck size restrictions, which are very different from state to state, location to location, due to local regulatory issues. We are seeing big help coming from big data, analytics, intelligent algorithm, which is solving the last mile delivery optimization problem. This adoption is only going to go higher. It's already at a tipping point where most companies which are early stage startups in this are probably looking at a reasonable size of operations. Once a lot of startups have matured to a reasonable size of operations, large business houses which have been looking away from them, not because of any other reason, but because of the fact that the perceived risk of trusting a significant share of moving a business volume into an early stage startup is slowly going away. And that's going to bring in significant improvements in efficiencies on the last mile transportation space, which is normally a very, very high share of your transportation spend in any geography. And that transformation to, let's say, a suboptimal efficiency level to extremely good optimal levels on transportation is fast approaching us. I think the next one to follow will be what changes we anticipate in the first mile. And they are also in the order of what we see as the timing in which they would take place. All B2C customer touchpoints will happen first. The next B2B, which is manufacturing to warehouse handshakes, including transportation, will happen next. I think the last thing probably which will happen as foreseen by us in Indian landscape is what we see on the first mile. In that, the only exception is a change which is happening on the intercity truck movements, which is a B2B handshake between a manufacturing unit and a downstream warehousing node. Where today trucks are not called on demand. Most of it is on mostly an annual contract on a transporter who gets a dedicated lane at a contracted rate pegged to fuel pricing prevalent at that fuel prices pegged at the prevalent at that market at that point in place. But I think this is fast changing. Lots of big startups, asset heavy, asset light models, which are changing the on-demand truck space on the first mile connectivity between factories and warehouses. What this is going to do normally is, if you look at the visibility aspects of the supply chain, there is a very high visibility and velocity which is provided to the customer, but I think there is hardly any visibility and transparency which is available to the business house itself in a transaction between two of its own nodes. I think on-demand trucking will bring a sweeping change in that traceability aspects of a very, very large spend on primary transportation, as well as track and trace of goods. And that change in the first mile space will happen sooner than later. What we are also seeing in the Indian context is, while we are not seeing automated operations on warehousing side on mid-mile, large marquee sites of large companies in each industry segment, be it FMCG, pharmaceutical, e-commerce, the largest sites of them, which are closest to the manufacturing locations, are already automation viable. And we see this as a change which has happened in the last 2 to 3 years, thanks to a surge in, I think, labor cost and unionism, which has happened in few manufacturing locations in the country. So we see automated warehouses coming. What automated warehouses automatically mandate, like mechanized warehouse mandates or WMS, is bring in sophisticated warehouse control systems, take out dependencies on labor, ensure that your throughput conditions of the business are met irrespective of local labor constraints, people availability during festivals, push from unionisms, and so on and so forth. And intelligent warehouse control systems optimizing the energy and time and and the errors which are currently errors in current shipments on the warehousing space. Now, these two are changes we expect to happen, we expect to see in the first mile space very quickly. I think a slow change will come on the MRO, which is the maintenance, repair, overhaul, and the asset management aspects of the manufacturing operations. Why we say this is, while we talk about Industry 4.0 as a general theme, Indian manufacturing still is, I think, scratching its surface of Industry 3.0. We are still trying to do standalone automation in manufacturing, which is viable for select companies at select locations, but not all pervasive because of, I think, labor cost arbitrages and the fairly distributed manufacturing for all low-cost products which are present in the marketplace. So only when you get high IIoT Industry 4 penetration on top of a high Industry 3.0 viability, we are going to shake things on a better way to manage expensive assets, a better way to do the entire maintenance, repair, overhaul, planning, and servicing requirements. I think the last thing to happen, as foreseen by us, would be on the emergence of the factories of future, embedding additive manufacturing, 3D, 4D printing, and other technological changes which are happening. A very, very small adoption of that has happened in the automotive sector, most often focused on the prototyping aspects of rolling out a product than on really making a finished good on demand on a made-to-order basis. So we feel that the change in Indian supply chain through technology intervention will happen in these three buckets. First on the last mile, then on the mid-mile, then on the smart trucks on demand and automated warehouses on the first mile, followed by a slow change on the MRO AM overhaul, as well as, I think, an end state being factories of future creeping into additive manufacturing techniques. So that's the summary. I think the B2C supply chains would be the early adopters. The last mile, mid-miles would see rapid change, and the smart trucks are coming. That's our take on how technology adoption will happen in the Indian supply chain space. Thanks a lot.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm Abhishek. I'm from Tata Strategic Management Group. We are the knowledge partner for this event. First of all, it's a pleasure to talk to all of you. My fellow speakers and in the earlier sessions, we looked at how digital is changing supply chain. I'm going to take you one step back and let's look at how Industry 4.0 or latest newer technologies, I mean, that's how we are loosely terming as Industry 4.0, is changing manufacturing, and hence, what are the impacts on the supply chain that we are going to see. Manufacturing is at the core of supply chain. So any change in manufacturing will have an impact on your supply chain. Our supply chains are engineered around manufacturing. Over the period, manufacturing has undergone multiple changes. It started way back in 18th century when manufacturing was largely craft production. Supply chain was simple. Few components coming together and making our end product. With the advent of electricity around 20th century, second revolution started. Mass production was the era of mass production. Supply chain became even more complex. In early 70s, computers and electronics made a roadway into shop floor. The entire era was mass customization. On the single assembly line, you started having different products. And your supply chain needed to be complex as well as agile to ensure that the supply-demand mismatch is taken care. Today, we are at the fourth industrial revolution, which is cyber-physical systems, which is the era of hyper-customization. Every product can be different, and it will definitely have an impact on supply chain. Your supply chain is going to be more complicated. Though it is very difficult to determine how your supply chain of tomorrow will look like, it is easy if you look at Industry 4.0 to say how it is going to evolve slowly. What are the different areas? What are the different aspects along which my supply chain is going to evolve? And let's have a look at that. Before going to that, let's have a look at what is Industry 4.0. Everybody have been hearing about it. There has been some understanding about Industry 4.0 in Indian industry. However, we have conducted a survey. It was India's first Industry 4.0 survey in manufacturing. We realized the awareness of Industry 4.0 in India is still somewhere lagging. We need to, and just to ensure that we are on the same page, I'm going to take you through this Industry 4.0 technologies. It is an interplay of several new age technologies which are working with each other. They are at a different level of various level of maturity and applicability. Each has a potential to change the business in a way that will disrupt the current way of business. I'm not going into deep into that, but what we have done is, as I mentioned earlier, as a part of India's first Industry 4.0 survey for manufacturing, we have worked out what are the five technologies that will have an impact on manufacturing out of this 9 that we saw in our earlier slide. These 5 technologies are additive manufacturing or 3D printing, IoT or industrial Internet of Things, autonomous robotics, augmented reality, and big data analytics. You may ask, what about the other 4 technologies? Are they not going to have impact? They will have impact, but their impact will get subsumed under some of the impacts or the larger impact that these 5 technologies are going to create. I will touch upon some impact that each of these technologies is going to bring it to manufacturing and hence supply chain over the next few slides. Most of the panel members or speakers before me have touched upon a lot of them. I'll try to quickly summarize some of the impact that we have seen based on our research. 3D printing. 3D printing is essentially way to print an object based with a layer of material using digital models. It completely removes necessity to remove material, which is the traditional way of manufacturing. How it is changing manufacturing, if you ask? It allows you to create intricate shapes which with a conventional